Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Mallory Anderson-Macy, and I am a BCBA and an ACT coach. So, if you're seeing this, it is because the wonderful people that you work for and with were interested in balance. We're interested in the idea of using your own science, ACT, and applied behavior analysis in the service of your mental health as a service provider using the ACT model, which is really exciting for me as someone who gets really jacked up about ACT. And the reason that I love ACT so much is because it's really just transformed my life. I'm, as I mentioned, a BCBA and have been for a really long time. I got my letters in 2013 and I have been in the field since 2005. So this stuff is really important to me. But it wasn't until, golly goodness, 2016 when I really discovered ACT. And it wasn't until, I don't know, probably 2019, maybe 2018, when I really started applying it. And it just completely changed my life from a mental health perspective. So much so that I have changed the way that I work and now only do ACT coaching and mentoring. So, that being said, today we're going to be focusing on the idea of work-life balance, which is the type of coaching that I do with people who are not behavior analysts. I'm also a mom of two littles. As I record this now, I have a 18-month-old and a 4-year-old. So I get it. And I've been, like I said, in your role, whichever role you're in, I've been in that role and I have experienced the extreme demands and the wide variety of tasks that you do. And I know that it is hard. You are asked to do a ton of things and you juggle all day long. And so sometimes when I start talking about balance, um, it ends up becoming just another thing on your to-do list. And it's another ask and another stretch and another thing that you don't have time for. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, I will have convinced you a little bit differently about what balance can be and what it does for you. So let's start there. Let's start with what is balance. Some people even have a negative relationship with the word balance all by itself. They have this idea that nothing can be equal, it's unachievable, and I don't have time for that. So I'm not going to try. And they're partially right. And that's what makes it so tricky. So balance, the way that I see it, isn't equal. It is incorrect proportion. So that's why we're going to spend a little bit of time getting to know what your correct proportions are today. But I also am going to just address the elephant in the room with the idea that it's inachievable and say that there are ways in which you could measure it as inachievable if you choose to see it that way. Your life is ever evolving. You change what's important to you sometimes on a daily basis, and you reach goals and set new ones all the time. And so in that way, your life is dynamic and your version of balance is too. There might be ways in which yesterday you were balanced in one area of life and today you are not, because something about that component or variable has changed. And that is okay. That's the acceptance piece around acceptance and commitment therapy. We're not going to get rid of the thoughts. We're not going to get rid of the feelings. We're going to change your relationship to them so that you can move in the direction of what's important to you. And so sometimes that's going to mean something different than the day before. And allowing that to be part of your journey and part of your transformation towards living the life you want to live, which I think is really important. Probably one of the most important things that we do. So let's get into what it is you're important to you, right? I've already messed up my my notes. I'm gonna make sure that I come back to this because I put it in the wrong spot. But what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and share this screen, and we're going to start off with values. And the reason that I start off with values is because values are like a moral compass. Okay. Values are going to be important to you regardless of the goal that you're working within. And if we start focusing on our values, we can take the hyper focus off of the thing that's challenging and draw it back a little bit. And that's going to be the majority of what we talk about today, is starting to put things into perspective. But before I hop into values, I want to think about the way that your brain works. And I'm going to use a computer because I think you are probably using something to watch this and are fairly familiar with computers. So our habitual evolutionary brain sits lower in our brain structure, and I'm going to call it the operating system. It's stuff that we don't really know how it works, and it impacts all of the other ways in which we think. And then up here in the upper part of our brain structure, we have the critical thinking, the creative part of our brain that is more flexible, less habitual. And think of that as the computer window, what you have open right now. Now, the way that your brain processes information is with the operating system, and then we view it through the window. Okay. And we can only view things through the window and manipulate them in the way in which our operating system allows. And when we go in to do something new and different, it is very challenging for the operating system to navigate until we get that new upgrade. And that is what changing the way that you think, and what we're going to work on here is going to be doing, is working on changing your operating system so that you can interact with your thoughts, you can interact with your environment in a way that is more helpful towards what is important to you. But what happens when you upgrade your operating system on your phone or on your computer or whatever device you use? It sucks, right? It's hard. It's not fun because you have to interact with it differently. And your patterns of acting, your patterns of habit, right, aren't functioning the same way. And it makes it harder. It makes it uncomfortable. And so the process of upgrading your operating system in service of your values and goals is going to be uncomfortable. But then at the end of it, there was a reason for the upgrade. Why? Right? And it ends up being more helpful or more intuitive for the most part, right? So just go with me on that metaphor. Don't argue with me about it. And that, my friends, is psychological flexibility. That is the function of ACT, is to be able to view the way that you view things in a flexible manner, to be able to take a step back from the immersion that we're in all the time of thoughts and feelings and be able to observe that process. Like a fish swimming in water isn't aware of the water. It doesn't care about it, but it impacts everything that it does. Breathing, movement, mating, feeding, like the water impacts all of that. And the same thing happens with our thoughts, right? Our thoughts and our feelings impact everything that we do, but we're not always aware of them. But we have the capacity. We just have to get practice, right? It is a habit for us to, and it's even beneficial for us to not take in all that information. Like right now, you're probably sitting on something, whether it be the floor or a chair, and you're not actively taking in the fact that you're sitting on something and that that thing is supporting you and then the structure of that thing. You're not considering that because it's not salient to what you're doing. And there are times that our operating system has made the decision that feeling and thinking and the beliefs that we're doing are not important, right? And so they are glossed over, especially if they're uncomfortable, they're glossed over. We avoid them. So getting in touch with why we would go through the discomfort of upgrading our operating system is one of the most important things that we're going to do, because you're going to have to touch into that why all the time. Because when you're upgrading, right, this part of your brain is going to have pretty much a temper tantrum because it's not normal for it yet. And it's breaking an old habit and building up a new one. So why is that important? You got to make sure your why is really strong. So now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This one. All right, hopefully. That's not what I meant to share. Let's do that one. This is it. Yeah. Oh, maybe I did share the right one the first time. So you should be seeing a big list of values now. And there are just over 200 on here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is come up with your top 10. And this is actually a challenging one. Okay. So you can screenshot this and you can have it. I'll probably also be sending this material to whoever contacted me to give this to you. And then you can have this, because identifying your values is something that's pretty important. I have mine on a list here because I reference them all the time. That's how important that they are in decision making. So I'm going to actually just set a timer. And what I'd like you to do is write down all of the ones that you vibe with. And then I want you to cross them out until you get to 10. And then make your top 10 list. And you're going to notice that some of these are synonyms, and that's okay. Just pick the one that you identify with most. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So I'm going to actually just set a timer, and I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay. Just 1 minute. It's not so hard. And if you don't finish, that's okay. Just go for it. And if you notice thoughts about oh, I should be doing something else, or this is stupid, just notice that they're coming up. Well, it's okay. You can think those thoughts, but if they're helpful or not, that's the evaluation. And if you're invested in this, then I would tell you that this is important and helpful. Okay, time's up. Not so bad. You probably didn't finish, and that's okay. You can always come back to this later. Just getting an idea is going to give you enough material to work with for this. Okay. Now, we're going to think about balance embodiment or values embodiment. Because let's think about the idea of balance for a minute, which is the point, work-life balance here. It implies that we're going to be putting the things of your life into their correct proportion. It also implies that potentially they are not in correct proportion now. So we need to get an evaluation of that. But before we do, let's talk about foundational needs and why they're important. You guys are probably all familiar with Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. And since you're in the science of psychology, I'm going to go ahead and just uh, believe that you can take that at face value, that those are important and that they are a part of human like nature in order to be successful and to feel successful, like thriving, is that hierarchy of needs is kind of met. And so an assumption there is the foundational component, the stuff at the bottom is being met. And probably for the most part, those things are being met. But for each individual, those things are different. And there's weight given to them differently. Okay. So it's not all just one perfect pyramid, even though in general, that's how it acts for people. So when you have a foundational need that goes unmet, the stuff above it will eventually fall through. That's burnout. And I'm sure that you're familiar with the term burnout because as a service provider, it is something that is a reality. It's inevitable if we don't make the effort and we don't prioritize with boundaries our foundational needs. Now, listen to that though. Burnout is inevitable if you do not make boundaries for your foundational needs and you do not prioritize them. What does that mean? Burnout means that you cannot not only do your job, which for whatever value that gives you, it means that you cannot service your clients in a way that is healthy for you and probably for them. Something that comes along with burnout is bitterness and resentment. Now, you don't have to be experiencing that now in order to understand how that would be pervasive to your work. But if you are experiencing that now, you can probably see how it is pervasive to your work. Things that wouldn't have been frustrating are things that are reasonable when you have your foundational needs met, that you don't give too much weight to or too much mental thought at all, give you hours of anguish and thought. Some good examples for me are when I want time. So if you've ever done those like love languages tests, mine is quality time. I'm really buoyed, reinforced by quality time. And when I would get emails from people that were reasonable and they were reaching out to me because I was their service provider and I had to respond to these people's emails and I felt like I needed to do so quickly or otherwise I wasn't doing my job, it took away from my time, which was one of my foundational needs, time for the things that make me me. So the things that make me me are, I like to read fiction. I like to take bubble baths because I'm basic and I love it. I need exercise and I need time that isn't for someone else. Autonomy is one of my really big, it's one of my values. And I know that about myself. And so when I give myself that autonomy, when I give myself that time for fun and joy and relaxation and family and creativity, I don't find emails to be frustrating because they're just emails and I can trust that I can get to them in my time, right? So that's just an example for me. And the way in which meeting our foundational needs can change the way that we interact with the tab that's open, right? We can change our operating system to interact with the tab that's open in a way that's more healthy for us, which in turn is more effective for our clients. We can also think about it in the way that you model for the people that report to you, or even if you report to them. Setting boundaries lets them know that that's acceptable for them to do too, and that it's appropriate, and that their foundational needs are a priority because you are prioritizing them for yourself, and that it can, that trickle down effect. So I hope that that makes sense in service of our balance. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at a values embodiment or a balance embodiment. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to have you guys do another little activity. Let's see. Hopefully I've got that right one. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Yeah, this one's in green. Okay, so here's 12 areas of life. All right. Family, friends, parenting, romance, personal development, fun and recreation, mental and physical health, community and society, career, finances, environment, spirituality. What I'd like you to do is to go through each one, and on a scale of 1 to 10, rate how important each one is for you. Now, this isn't what other people think. This isn't, what your boss thinks or your mom or, whoever, what society tells you. This is what's important for you. And just really quickly, with 1 being not important and 10 being really important, rate those. I'm going to give you a minute to put a value to each one. And we're going to do another one. So the number is important. Don't just think it, actually write it down. You're doing great. If, again, this feels silly or you have thoughts, just bring yourself back to the present moment, because this can be important too, and that's safe. The other things will wait. Cool. All right, you ready for the kicker? Now what I want you to do is go back through these same ones, and instead of rating 1 through 10 for importance, rate 1 through 10 for time and effort. 1 being not a whole lot of time and effort, and 10 being a ton of time and effort. And maybe evaluate this over a week, because we might not interact with every single one of these every single day. So 1 through 10 for time and effort. I'm going to set the timer again. Cool. So you've probably noticed that those numbers don't match up very well. Some parts might, which is really cool. But this is giving us like a little snapshot of where we can get information and potentially where we can create target goals. So if the numbers are the same or one apart, you're probably pretty balanced there. That's probably a really good spot to look for when you want to get an idea of how you already embody balance and what strategies you might be able to use in other places. You've also probably got places that have a really high importance, but that aren't getting very much time and effort. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's probably because you are a service provider. Oh, heavens. Fun and recreation. Probably family and friends, potentially romance or personal development, maybe even mental or physical health. Those types of things usually are the first to go by the wayside for people who put a lot of value in helping others, which is a beautiful value. But at the same time, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing, right? Eventually, the burnout will happen if we do not attend to the foundational needs. And so, upgrading that operating system is the best answer here. And it's what ACT is best at. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Oh, there's also probably ways in which there's stuff that is got an importance value that doesn't that has more effort or time going into it. It doesn't mean that it's not important, right? But it doesn't match. And that is probably a place where we could target for a reduction of time and effort and maybe the amount of thoughts we have. And it's not even necessarily time and effort, because that's probably bringing up some fears of yours pretty quickly. But it's setting boundaries with that time and effort in service of filling up our other needs because of the foundational needs thing, right? So let's go ahead and think about limiting beliefs. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to do a visualization / meditation. Sometimes BCBAs get really uncomfortable when I do this, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I think it's really cool. What I want you to do is have that same pen and paper or document that you have at the ready, and I'm just going to do a quick visualization with you, and you're going to write it down. Okay, this is like meditation light. Okay, so don't get too worried. But what I'm going to have you do is find a comfortable seat. If you're sitting crisscross applesauce, right, have your back nice and strong. If you're sitting in a chair, have your feet flat on the floor. Don't tuck your legs up under yourself, and have your arms comfortably sitting on your lap, on your thighs, or on your knees, or maybe the arms of your chairs, just so that we're not entangled in ourselves. Get the blood flow moving. Go ahead and take a big, deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. We're going to do that a few times. In through the nose, expanding in the front, side, and back of your body. Maybe breathe all the way up into your head. Let it be a little uncomfortable and let it out like a pressure valve. When you get down to the bottom, maybe contract your stomach muscles and squeeze out every last drop. And then let the air fill in on its own. Deep breath all the way up to the top. Hold it at the top and exhale. Now, allow yourself to breathe normally without judgment. And just notice what it's like to breathe right now without a need to change it, without a need to fix it. And let's do a quick body scan and just ask different parts of our body to see if they can relax just a little bit more. Start with your toes. If there's any tension there, see if you can release it just a little more. Tops of your feet, your heels, your ankles, shins, calves, knees, quads, hamstrings, your glutes, hips, your low back, your belly. If you're holding your belly in, relax it. Your chest and mid back. Your upper back and shoulders. Your biceps, triceps, elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, fingers, fingertips. Back up to your shoulders. That one usually needs a little second adjustment. Let go of any stress that's there. Into your throat, your hinge of your jaw. If your tongue is on the roof of your mouth, let it hang loose. The corners of your mouth, your cheeks, the corners of your eyes, your eyebrows, forehead, hairline, the top of your head. Can that relax just a little bit? And now as a whole body, just relax just 2% more. And notice your body as a whole in this moment right now. If there's any sensations or feelings, just notice them. You don't need to fix them. They just happen. And watch it kind of float by like a cloud in the sky. And I want you to start attending to the room that you're in without opening your eyes. Remember the colors in the room, maybe the furniture or the fabrics. Any details you can recall. Check in with what you're feeling, how your body is supported by the chair or the floor, the places where you're covered by clothes and not, the temperature in the room, maybe your hair. Notice any tastes or smells. Notice any sounds. And just notice them. They're just information. They don't have to mean anything. It's just stuff that you're taking in. And now I want you to think to a perfect Wednesday. Just a day of the week. Let's start at the beginning when you wake up. And I want you to think about all the things we've already talked about, your values, the 12 areas of life and how you embody them, and what would be a perfect day. And this is a working day. Hopefully, if your Wednesday is not a working day, pick another. And start in the morning. And notice what's not present. And notice what is. What feelings do you have? What feelings do you want to feel? And how can you have them? As you move through the morning and into the mid-morning, what's happening now? What's present and what's not? What feelings do you have about that? And midday, what's present and what's not? What do you feel about that? Afternoon, evening, and nighttime. What's present and what's not? How do you feel about that? And as you lay your head down on your pillow, what are you grateful for? What things made your day memorable and valuable? What is the feeling that you want to have at the end of your day? All right. Now, without any rushing, wiggle your toes and your fingers and start coming back to the present moment. And open your eyes. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to write down that day on your piece of paper. Like actually write it down. Okay, I'm going to put 2 minutes on my timer and let you write down your perfect day, remembering what wasn't present, what was present, and how you felt. And I set a timer, so you know how long this is. The other things will wait. They will be there. And just notice how they come up in your mind, and you can let them float by like the clouds in the sky. And just stay focused to your task of what you want your life to be. What's your ideal scenario? And if you have any arguments that come up for them, just notice them. We'll get to those, I promise. There's just 30 seconds left. Keep writing. Great. Time's up. So now what I want you to do is notice all the arguments you have as to why this can't happen for you. Notice the beliefs, that's impossible. Notice the identities, the self-identities that you have. Well, BCBAs don't do that, or parents don't do that, or people my age don't do that. Notice the all or nothing, the black and white thinking, it's either this or it's that, it's me or it's them. And notice the expectations that you have where there could be a different interpretation, and that could be okay. That stuff is what I'm talking about. That's what's getting in the way of you making this ideal scenario happen. That is the stuff that needs upgrading in our operating system. That is the psychological flexibility that we need to look at. And that's really hard because it's not just a thought, it's a feeling. It's a long history of responding and conditioning. And it's like a super highway of a neural pathway in your head. And the task of upgrading your operating system is making a new pathway, like taking a machete and going through the dense forest that is your fear, that is your shame, that is your guilt, and making a new path through it to the life that you want. And the more that path is traveled and the less the other one is, the stronger that new path gets and the more grown over the other path has. Now, your Siri is going to try and take you on that fast path again and again and again. And you're going to notice that that's happening because it will. It will happen. You will say stuff like, well, that can't happen because I need to respond to my emails. Or it's all right if I put off taking that day to go paddleboarding that I wanted to do, because getting all of these hours done for this client is really important. It's going to happen where you're going to say something like, this important treatment plan is got to be done now. And if I don't get it done now, then I'm a bad person. And that feels really yucky. And I don't want to be a bad person. Check all that for helpfulness and truth in the service of your values and goals. And remember the burnout stuff, right? Remember the foundational needs stuff. These thoughts are the stuff that prevent you from filling in your foundational needs and allow you to move towards burnout and prevent you from being able to be most effective with your clients and your supervisees and your coworkers, and from living the life you want to live. So all that stuff is really important, but it's safe. So a Chinese finger trap is a really good example of this. It's one that our wonderful Steve Hayes puts into the book, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, which is a fantastic book for getting started. And when you do, I don't have one, but a finger trap, and you pull and pull and pull against the discomfort of being stuck, right? The more stuck you become. But when you lean into it and you tunnel through it, like I mentioned, you're going to make a goat path right through your fear and your discomfort with your machete. You get free of the Chinese finger trap. For you Harry Potter fans, Devil's Snare functions the same way. The more you struggle, the more it gets you, but the more you relax into it and you go through the fear and you allow it to exist and you accept that those thoughts, those fears are always going to be there. You can't push them away, but you change your relationship with them. You accept that they are there and you do the thing anyway, committed action. Self is context. That's what we're talking about. All of these things are ACT. If you're familiar with the hexaflex, we're getting to that psychological flexibility and we're moving towards our values to create the life that we want to live. That's the work. That's the work. Noticing is the first part, just getting aware of it, creating the steps in that direction, and then celebrating the shit out of that, because you all know how important reinforcement is. So how are we going to do that? Journaling, meditation, coaching or therapy, all really good practice at getting to observe the way that you think and start to question it. Okay. Here's some other strategies, right? Reframing it, turning it backwards. That idea that I can't take the painting class on Thursday night because this client is there and they need me. Can we reframe that? Can it be, I'm going to communicate my needs to these people and I'm going to reframe it for the, 5 weeks that I'm going to take the painting class. And that's going to help me to be a better provider. And it's worth the energy of the reschedule. Can we reframe that? Outsourcing or getting help. For me, scheduling is a really big pain. And so I actually just buy an app called Acuity, but there's one that's free called Calendly, where I put my availability in and I put my different appointments, and I put a 15-minute buffer at the end, and I let other people schedule, and I don't do that because it breaks my bandwidth. Getting help, right? Is there a place that you can get more help? Is there a place where we can accept that it's going to be hard? Is there some more communicating that we could do, because everybody else is doing the same work that I'm doing and probably hears my needs imperfectly because they're also sorting through the judgments? And what about all of those things, the noticing, the reframing, the outsourcing, the accepting, and the communicating? Do you have a problem with? Are you arguing with that can't work for you? Because that's the stuff you need to reframe. Those are the limiting beliefs, the self-identities, the black and white thinking, the expectations not being open enough that are preventing you from getting there. So start writing it down. Start talking about it with someone. Start practicing meditation so that you can get available to that level of thinking, that taking a step back, that not being immersed in our thoughts and feelings, like the fishes in the water, and being able to see them for what they are and ask them, are you helpful? Are you true in service of my values and goals? Journaling is one of my very favorites because you can do it all by yourself. I like to do intention setting journaling, where I pick something that's really important to me. That's the feeling. That's why I was focusing on your feelings during your meditation. A lot of the times, behavior analysts gets really uncomfortable with feelings because we believe that private events aren't necessary to behavior change. And while they are not necessary, they are super helpful. And by allowing them to exist in our toolbox when they are appropriate, we are helping our toolbox, not somehow failing Skinner. So if you're trying to invoke more of a certain type of feeling, which is probably on your values list. But for me, like autonomy, joy, empowerment, confidence, competence, an acceptance of failure being growth instead of a damnation, and that perfection is the only way. And then notice at the end of the day, like set that intention that that's something that you're going to find. And then at the end of the day, find examples of it. Get really creative with the way that you interpret things and see how it actually did happen. Start gathering your evidence. Start running that goat path so that it becomes a road and then eventually the superhighway. Scripting is another one, which is what we kind of did with the visualization. What is your perfect day? And how can I take steps towards that? Just little ones, tiny little steps. And how can that be good, right? And then coaching. I'm a coach. I help people, which is what I said at the beginning, learn how to walk this path and to start questioning those things and use their own creativity and practice to start moving in the direction of the life that they'd like to live. So I hope I blew your mind here with your own science and stepping you into ACT, stepping you into life balance from your own science, because it's really important as a service provider to be able to start thinking about this. Otherwise, your life as a service provider is going to be pretty short and you're going to end up doing something differently. And we need you. right? Like that's why you're doing this, is because you want to help people. And so we need to help you to be able to be in a position to be able to help people. My Instagram is mindfully Mallory. I do one-to-one clients, and I've got lots of free content for you to go ahead and check out. And there's more free content always. I have a YouTube and a TikTok and some Facebook groups. In fact, right now we're doing a free book club of Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, and doing chapter reviews there. So please come check me out if this aligned with you. And I hope that you take some of these strategies with you moving forward into your own mindfulness practice, because I think it would be really good for you. And the more brave I've become in stepping in the direction of my discomfort in service of my values and goals, the more blessed I become. I think Glennon Doyle said that. If you know who she is, we're probably already besties. All right. So good luck. Come find me on Instagram at Mindfully Mallory, and go back through and do those exercises if there wasn't enough time for you to write them down or to get your values. I actually do these exercises regularly over and over and over again, so I can get towards the most correct iteration of my life that I want it to be. And notice that perfection thing. That's probably a thing for you. All right. Bye, everybody.